and it's just a beautiful beer. We happen to have struck gold, I think, with the combination of these herbs.
I'm Jill Angelo, host of the Geneve podcast series for women's health in midlife. I speak with the most forward-thinking experts in the health and wellness industries. These experts are helping women 40 plus feel confident and in control of their health in the most vibrant years of their lives. So join us on this journey of women's health. Motherwort, lemon balm, stinging nettle sounds a lot like a witch's brew, doesn't it? But they're actually ingredients in the Portsmouth Brewery's new beer, a brewed called Libeeration. Why, you ask, is Geneve interested in beer? Because Libeeration was created specifically for women experiencing menopausal symptoms. We talked to the brewery co-owner, Joanne Francis, and our head brewer, Matt Gallagher, about how Libeeration came to be. I am here today with Joanne and Matt from Portsmouth Brewing and Smutty Nose Brewery. Is that how you say it?
Actually, backwards. The Portsmouth Brewery and Smutty Nose Brewing Company.
This is the first time I've ever done a podcast with brewmasters, and I want to learn a little bit more about your brewery.
I'm going to let you take it because
right.
You're a part of the history more than me.
So the term brewmaster is not my title. To be a brewmaster really requires a lot of training, a lot of experience, a lot of background in proper schooling. We have a brewmaster at Smutty Nose Brewing Company. His name is Steve Schmidt, and the guy has got amazing, crazy rock star credentials. And I frankly don't know where you stand in the brewmaster. I mean, you're head of brewing.
I prefer to call myself a head brewer.
Head brewer.
Head brewer.
You know, there's
Right.
technical differences in those titles.
So collectively, though, you're in the beer business. So how did you get your start in the beer business?
I started, in 1990 when I moved to this area. I was the art director for an ad agency, and my experience has always been in art and design. I have a BA in fine art and commercial art. And then I took a job with a ad agency, much to my better judgment, and I was quickly moved to this area with that agency, and one of the first clients that we got was a brand new brewery coming to Portsmouth, which was Peter, my partner, my life partner and my business partner. He and his sister started the Portsmouth Brewery on the heels of starting the Northampton Brewery in Western Mass, and they opened that in 91, and I met Peter just before that designing their very first collateral, and he and I got together about a year and a half later, and then I got sucked into the brewery vortex. It was more than all-consuming, and I was doing work for the Northampton Brewery as well. And then Smutty Nose came along in 94, and then, so I should have been probably a small ad agency doing the work that I was doing in those early years. So yeah, that's how I got in the beer business, but brewing was not particularly my background.
That was me.
And how about you, Matt, then? So beer is your business. Beer has been your business.
Yep. I grew up with a home brewing father, so I woke up early in the morning on Saturdays to the smell of hops and malt in my kitchen, much to my mother's dismay. And then I was brewing beer, in my closet in college, which is a great way to make friends. And then I sort of forgot about it and never thought I had the opportunity to go pro, and I was doing tree work for most of my adult life and farming. But then when I got into an age where I didn't feel like climbing trees for a living anymore, I sort of hit the reset button, threw all the chips in the air again, and met Peter and Joanne and kind of landed here. Trained under our former head brewer for a few years, and then he left and opened his own brewery, and I applied and stepped up into his position.
In the craft beer industry, there's sort of layers of, or in categories of what you're called. We here at the Portsmouth Brewery, we're a brew pub, which means we brew our own beer for consumption under our own roof.
So for our listeners, I'm on a Zoom call right now with Joanne and Matt,
and they are sitting in the brew pub or in the brewing warehouse. So you can see it's a great environment. You might even sometimes hear background. I think you said it's a brewing day, or a day
Yes.
where machines are running. What is that? Tell us a little bit about that.
So we're currently downstairs. We're sitting right next to a spiral staircase, and upstairs we have a little over 200 gallons of wort being produced that's going to get fermented out into beer. So we've got some people working diligently right above our heads.
By now, our listeners are probably like, okay, beer and women's health, because obviously at Genève we focus on women's health and midlife and menopause. What's the connection between the two? And there's an interesting connection because you guys just recently brewed, I don't know what the proper term is, but created, is it Libeeration, an empowering group for women in midlife and menopause?
The concept was something that I've been dreaming of and thinking about for about 5 or 6 years. Thinking about ways in which we as a business, the practical part is to, always sell more beer, reach more people, and be more tuned into a lot of the demographics that perhaps haven't been tapped into. So primarily for all the years in the craft beer industry, you're focused on 21 to 35-year-old males. Little by little over the last decade, a lot of younger women, under 35-year-old women in particular, that's still the sort of the biggest chunk of the audience in the people drinking craft beer. You're still competing for that same audience over and over again with all of the other craft breweries in the country. And at this point, here we are in October of 2017, we're probably around the 6,000 mark on how many craft breweries are in the country. It's a lot of people competing for those same numbers. So there was that, but there was also the part where I, as a creative person, as my background has always been in designing and constantly dreaming up things, I felt like there was an opportunity to pay attention to women in my own age group. And all of my girlfriends are beer drinkers. And not just sort of mindlessly drinking, but every time we've had beer together, every one of them wants a contemplative, genuine conversation, because all of my girlfriends love food, they love cooking, they love thinking and talking about it and recipe sharing. So it's natural that they care about the beer they're drinking. So I thought, my God, so they can't be the only ones. So I thought, and I'm very involved with alternative healthcare, and there was just in my mind an opportunity to bring together herbs, flowers, essences, and put it in a beer that is good for hormonal toning at our particular age. So it made sense to me. And then when I brought it up earlier years to certain individuals, it didn't make sense to them. They thought it was a horrible idea. And so then Matt came along.
I was going to ask,
yeah.
So Matt, what did you think with Joanne bringing this idea to you, as the person putting it all together and creating the beer and brewing it? Like, what went through your head?
I accepted it as a great challenge, like you can see, this is where I spend my days. It's a little cellar. It's dark. There's not even a window.
And you can't see the chain that's around his ankle that keeps him.
Well, and even for our listeners, like they're even like sipping some of the Libeeration brew while we do podcasts, and it's delicious. It's absolutely delightful and has this kind of sweet essence to it. So sorry, Matt, totally
okay.
just like me to want to pounce on, but tell me what did you think and how did you go about creating it?
Well, all those things you just said about it, that's what I felt like my goal was. I had to take the idea, the concept that was in Joanne's head, and make it into a liquid that fit all those qualities, that was drinkable. I wanted something that was enjoyable, thirst quenching, all of those things. So that was the task, and it makes brewing with 4 very simple ingredients. Beer is made from really 4 simple ingredients. So it just adds a whole nother level of research and excitement and education to my everyday job in life.
What is it about it that is really formulated for hormonal health?
One of the main ingredients in most beers, not this particular beer, but in most beers, are hops. And hops have a natural phytoestrogen that is particularly good for women of a certain age. And it's also got a soporific effect, and it helps you sleep. It does make you a little quieter and calms you down. And that's one of the things that you want to pay attention to in menopause, which is calming the anxiety, sort of just bring your mood down to a little bit less of a irritated or cranky. A lot of those things that we all say about ourselves. I'm not saying it about anybody except myself. I know that about me, and I can feel that bubbling up. And I always felt like beer was one of those alcohols that it just, I don't know, I see people here at the brewery and everybody's just sort of happy, and it's a calm kind of feeling as opposed to, doing shots of Jägermeister.
Yeah.
For example, whenever my wife comes, if we're going to do something in town after I get out of work, if she comes a little early and I'm still working, she'll usually sit at the bar and have a beer, and she claims every time she comes here and orders a beer, she ends up getting into a great conversation with a total stranger who she happened to sit next to. And it's just,
that's one of the things that my kinesiologist, Dr. Marilyn Svihovic, who actually was one of the women that helped us design the ingredients for this beer, she's always been promoting the idea of social drinking in going to pubs and taverns, because that's how you get to know people, and that's how you meet strangers and make friends with people you didn't think you had anything in common with. So I took that out of Dr. Marilyn's page, and I really like that philosophy and that way of looking at it.
So let's talk a little bit about the ingredients and what makes this beer so special for women in midlife and menopause.
Sure. I mean, most beers are made from 4 simple ingredients like we talked about before, barley being sort of the base, the workhorse of the industry. Water is also a huge component, and then yeast and hops. This beer, a gruit style, is a beer that was brewed traditionally without hops. Before hops were available to every brewer around the world, they would have to go out and forage for whatever, green herbs they could find that would add a bittering characteristic to balance out the sweetness from the barley. So this is sort of the style we ended up going for, was this gruit style. So in the kettle, while we were boiling, we only added these medicinal herbs that we came up with, and then we actually added hops only to it in secondary fermentation because it was such a beneficial herb and flower for our cause. So to come up with the list of herbs, we met with an herbalist, and we met with Dr. Marilyn, and sort of we had an herbalist create a longer list of herbs that she would suggest to any woman who was looking to alleviate certain symptoms of menopause. And then we had Dr. Marilyn kind of cross-reference some of those herbs and sort of suggest maybe yes, maybe no to some of them, mixing them with alcohol. So then we shortened a longer list right then and there. And then what we had left, Joanne and I ordered small samples of them, like little 1-ounce samples of everything we had left on that long list, and we spent an afternoon drinking tea, just hydrating them in hot water and getting an idea of their flavor and aroma and seeing if it would work well in a beer. And then off of that longer list, we crossed a few off just because they didn't have really beneficial aromas or flavors for beer, and then came up with 8 herbs that we both liked. And after we had all that tea, we both went and took a nap.
Not together.
Not yet. we were both feeling quite relaxed after tasting all those.
We were so like, hey, you getting sleepy? Yeah, I need a nap. Seriously, it was so funny.
So we ended up with 8 herbs. Motherwort, which the herbalist suggested was beneficial for hot flashes, night sweats, and heart palpitations. Lemon balm, which is a stress and anxiety and also liver support and insomnia. It also is very tasty. chamomile, which everyone knows is a very relaxing sort of tea and herb, and also great aromatic and really beautiful flavor to that as well. Stinging nettle, which no one usually thinks is something you really want to be bringing into your body, but it is, unless you rub up against it, it's actually a beautiful herb which supports your liver and your nervous system. We have mugwort also in that, which is a stress and anxiety and liver support, hormone balancer. Rose, which is just a beautiful aromatic. It's a heart medicine, a skin toner, and liver support as well. And then we had chickweed, which is obviously ironic that it's called chickweed, but it brings a lot of moisture back into your body, and it flushes the body of excess fat and fluid, and it tastes incredible. And then we finished up with Damiana, which tastes similar to chamomile with like a little bit of cinnamon in there, and that relaxes your nerves and stimulates sexual desire and supports liver function. So yeah.
Awesome. You had me at stimulate sexual desire. Oh my gosh. This thing, is it flying off the shelves?
It's gone. It's already gone.
It's gone. It's gone. We're brewing a second batch on Monday.
Yes.
So if you hop on a plane this weekend, you could come and brew it with us on Monday.
Yeah.
I would love that. So yeah, let's talk about the business, because this is such a unique thing. There's not another craft beer like on the planet like targeted towards women in menopause, is there?
Not that we're aware of.
Judging from the amount of press that we've been getting, which has been a complete and total shock, it's been kind of nuts. And so I guess that is accurate, that it has not been done before.
Well, obviously you're on to something in terms of tapping into an audience that is incredibly underserved. And creating something for them. Who are your customers? Can they buy your beer online? Like, where do we have to fly to Massachusetts to get it?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire, yeah.
New Hampshire. I'm so sorry. New
That's
Hampshire.
okay. Well, you would fly to the Boston Logan Airport.
You would fly into
so
Logan.
Technically you were right. And then you would drive up here an hour north, and then you would have it. No.
So is the only place you can get it?
Yes.
There?
Yes.
At your brew pub?
Yes. However, because there's been such a uproarious demand for it, I've been working on, licensing it and figuring out, it's not really figuring it out. I know how we can brew more. I happen to, be partners in a craft brewery that we can do bottling in a much bigger quantity. So timing is everything. I would love to be able to do that. This has been such a great test room laboratory for us to just do a small batch and think, all right, let's see how people like it. And apparently they do. And P.S., there's not a lot that you can do to a product if it tastes icky. And it's just a beautiful beer. We happen to have struck gold, I think, with the combination of these herbs. And one of the things that I often say to people when you're talking really great brewers, you have to know people in that industry who like to cook, that care about food, that like Matt is a forager, that's a cook at home, that is really knowledgeable about foods. And I think that's always probably missing from the conversation when you're talking about makes a good beer or who makes a good beer, and it's somebody that really understands flavors. And so Matt understood that. And then there's the I think a really important part was the yeast. And you can talk about that selection.
Yeah, that was one part of the equation that was pretty fun. Was we weren't really sure how all those different herbs would play with yeast and fermentation. So Joanne and I test brewed a 10-gallon batch, like on a very small scale, like a homebrew sort of style batch, before we brewed the big one. And we separated the 10 gallons into little 5-gallon fermenters and tried out a couple different yeast strains just to see what yeast would play nice with all these herbs. I had a couple in mind, but then we got to do a taste out again with Joanne and a small crew of dedicated folks, and that's when we kind of decided, like, yep, that yeast, it's perfect, it's great,
When you say you brew a big batch and now you're brewing another, like how much is in a batch?
So for this batch of the bottle that you have, it was a 7-barrel batch of beer, which is just a little over 200 gallons of liquid. Yeah, wow. Just over 200 gallons. But that 7-barrel batch could eventually be scaled up to a 50-barrel batch, which is, more than I can make in a month or so here on this system.
Yeah, so that's when we can graduate it to Smutty Nose, which is our other brewery, which has a much bigger capacity. But it's just nice to be able to test kitchen it over here.
I love the label. Joanne, obviously you can tell that you have a background in design. It's got a bunch of beautiful women of all ages just really having fun.
When we took that photo of all of my girlfriends in our yard, that's my stone wall, and that's our dog Myrtle photobombing in the back there. Those women drank us dry at my house. I thought I had so much beer at home, and they kept drinking the props. And it was only an hour photo shoot. It literally was just, hey, let's all go sit on the stone wall, and somebody's husband will come and take the photo for us, which is what happened. And bless his heart, the man who took the photo, Lee, put up with 17 women telling him how to take a photograph.
It's really great.
Funny. Can I just want to quickly add the idea of this being a gruit? It is a natural consequence of the fact that we were using herbs and flowers in it. But gruits are a very ancient fermented alcohol, and they were really what was made before beer as you know it, which is made with hops for bittering and flavoring and preservation. Gruits are about 9,000 years old, and the beers that we drink mostly are about 1,000 years old. And the hop craze personally is not particularly interesting to me. There's a ton of hop varieties, and if you were smarter than me and more nuanced in your drinking than me, you'd be able to. I know that Matt could tell the difference. I cannot, but I love that it is a gruit just for that sort of old, very, very ancient old recipe. I like that.
I feel like we should end the podcast like with a toast or cheers or salute.
Cheers.
Or, whatever. And I've got a bottle here, and you guys, thank you for doing what you're doing. This is fantastic.
Thank you. You too. Likewise.
And if anyone's in New Hampshire, flying in through Logan Airport, check out Portsmouth Brewery. Go to the brew pub and meet Joanne and Matt.
Yeah. And the new batch will be ready in a month.
Yes. Yeah.
Fantastic.
About a month.
Yeah. Excellent.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Many thanks to Joanne and Matt for talking with us and for sending us some Libeeration to enjoy. It's a delicious citrusy beer, and we highly recommend it for anyone who's a beer drinker, menopausal or not. Next up, we're talking to Dr. Kelsey Klausmeyer, a naturopathic doctor from the Institute of Complementary Medicine. He's going to talk to us about lipedema, which affects up to 11% of women, but most of us have never heard of it. This painful buildup of fat in the lower half of the body usually occurs around the times of hormonal change, like puberty, pregnancy, and menopause. Hear more about our conversation about this condition and how you know if you have it and how to treat it. I'll see you soon. Thanks for listening to the Geneve podcast series. We welcome your feedback at geneve.com. That's GENNEVE.com. You can follow us on Facebook and subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher, and you'll never miss an episode. The Geneve podcast series is produced by Shannon Perry, theme music by Smitty. And until next time, watch the Geneve website for new stories and offers all dedicated to women's midlife health.